deal away, and this is just going to be an extra shema. So that's a really standard thing to do. It seems a little weirder when you do it with the count. Not everyone recommends it, but it is a possibility. Other people just remember to do it later. That's and you have all night. Now you have all night and all day really to count because it's a full day. But despite the fact that again you should do it right away, once the 3 stars come out, nevertheless, regardless of how quickly or how slowly you do it, till nighttime you can make the bracha. Because I'm not exactly sure why, but for purposes of this discussion, you're considered to have counted a full day if you've caught the day with at least a little bit of nighttime left. You get a little bit of night and day in there, then you're good. But if you waited till the morning, you would no longer count with the bracha. You have to count out a bracha. That's because there are opinions that say if you didn't wake up until daytime, it's too late to count that day. As long as it's these days I think daybreak before. If you wake up before that, you can count with the bracha. Now, if you miss a day entirely, so then if you miss a day, then you don't do anything. You count the next day. So the rule is that you count the next. Now, if let's say you missed day number 8, right, you count the next day as day number 9. Right, it doesn't become day number 8 just because you missed day number 8. It's still day number 9. But what's more relevant for us to discuss is that if you missed a day, whether it's day number 8 or day number 41 or any day in between, then every subsequent day that you count without a bracha. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. If you miss one day, you count the rest of the days without a bracha. And again, that's because there are those that view the mitzvah as a package deal. And that's the argument why they say that a person doesn't think that they can follow, at least for a woman who's not technically obligated, and she doesn't think she can follow it through, there might be an argument to not even start, because if you view it as one mitzvah, you're not going to get the entire mitzvah. Why start at all? Again, I don't think that it's really relevant today. If a person wants to do it, it's quite doable. I don't think we have any reason to assume that a person can't make it through to the end. But what becomes interesting is, and this is something that we repeat every year, but it's worth repeating again, that if a person forgets to count at night, remembers to count during the day, they count during the day without a bracha. If a person forgets an entire day, they count the next day and every following day without a bracha. But if a person forgets to count at night and counts during the day without a bracha, they will count the next night and every subsequent night with a bracha. Right? And the reason for that is, it's called the svek sveka, the double maybe, and this is a very familiar concept to people who study Talmud, that there's 2 unresolved questions, 2 debates in the halacha. One is, as we said, does counting during the day count? Right? Anytime we count without a bracha, why would we do that? We're doing it because we think it might be a mitzvah, but we're not 100% sure. And we avoid making brachas that are questionable, because the brachas, like taking the name of Hashem, the brachas are almost invariably rabbinic, and the rule is basically, it's really a combination of 2 rules. First of all, the rule is that rabbinic mitzvahs, when in doubt, you're not obligated to fulfill. So any rabbinic mitzvah that's in doubt, generally speaking, you're not obligated. And number 2 is, a bracha is not optional. It's either required, or it's a bracha in vain, and it's forbidden. You don't have a middle ground with brachas. So, generally speaking, with bracha, when in doubt, we don't, because we say, on the one hand, since brachas are almost invariably rabbinic, I'm not obligated to do it, and when I'm not obligated, I'm not actually allowed to make a bracha. Right? That's why the exceptions, there are 1 or 2 exceptions, brachas hamazon, benching, brachas haTorah, the bracha on the Torah, those brachas have a biblical root. In benching, we say in the benching itself, kakosov, we in the benching we reference the pasuk in the Torah which tells us to bless Hashem for our food. So because it's a biblical mitzvah, if you're not sure about a biblical obligation, you have to do it. So that overrides the concern about making a bracha in vain. It's not in vain. I have to do it. It's when it comes to rabbinic mitzvah. If I don't, then I don't have to, and then I shouldn't. A biblical mitzvah, if I'm not sure, then I do have to, and then I should do it.
Rabbi,
yes.
Is making a bracha in vain? Is that like if you say for wine, you say or you say the bracha for wine and then you forget to drink the wine? Or is that in vain?
It's an interesting question. If a person makes a bracha, unless like you get an example of wine, but it could be anything. If a person makes a bracha and the food falls on the floor, or something like that, or they discovered that they thought it was wine, but it was really water. They discuss these kinds of cases. To a certain extent, yes, I think that bracha has now become in vain. Obviously, the person is not going to be held accountable in the same way because it was not their intention. I think in that case, ideally, one should look for a way to validate the bracha. So, for example, if you made a bracha on wine, you discovered it was water, but you have a bottle of wine on the next table, you should quickly pour the wine and drink it. Or if I've been in the situation. They say if you're say I wash my hands in the morning and I start to make an al tilas yadayim, then I realize that I already made an al tilas yadayim. So finish off the bracha and say shahakol niyabed varo and grab a glass of water and drink it if you're thirsty, or for water you can only make a bracha on water if you're thirsty. So and I actually looked this up. I saw. There was a question about that because you can. I mean, there's a discussion. I was reading this not in the primary source. I was reading in the English brachos book, but there was a discussion about that because technically, when you make a bracha on food, if it wasn't your intention, you get into all sorts of questions. Even when you make a bracha on an apple and you want to eat an orange, put the orange in the other room. Is it covered? Is it not covered? But at least to make it simple, if there's an apple on the table somewhere or right there in the fridge, and it's definitely the halachically preferable option would be to end off the bracha with boy for and eat the apple rather than if the apple really, if you have to go down the block to the store and buy an apple, that might not be halachically preferable. But again, in a simple sense, if it's just a question of I wasn't planning to eat. I actually wasn't even planning to make a bracha on food at all. I was meant to make a bracha on my tefillin, and then I realized it was Shabbos and I don't put on tefillin today. Whatever it is, and you can salvage the bracha by turning it into a food bracha, that is recommended because we do everything possible to avoid making a bracha in vain. Again, it's hard. The idea of not taking a Shabbos name in vain, it wasn't the intention, but it could be post facto. It could be, again, you were holding a cup of wine and the cat, ran to the room and knocked it out of your hand. It's not a fault. It's completely unintentional. So it would be hard to say that you're obligated to do that because I didn't do anything wrong. But if you have the opportunity to convert it, and certainly if it was just a question of forgetfulness, I started to make a bracha and I realized I already made one. There is some level of responsibility when you do things out of forgetfulness. So if there's a way to salvage it, that should be done. But the point is, there's a difference potentially between men and women with the benching. I'm not sure why, because benching is not a time-bound mitzvah, but benching might be more biblical for men than for women. I don't know. But the point, almost invariably, in almost every case, the brachas are rabbinic, even if the mitzvahs are biblical. Again, the bracha on matzah, the bracha on tefillin, the bracha on almost anything. Even if the mitzvah itself is a biblical mitzvah, the brachas are almost invariably rabbinic. So if you're not sure, I don't remember if I made a bracha on the matzah. I don't remember if I made a bracha on my tefillin. You would not make the bracha, and with the Omer as well. So if you're counting during the day, since some people say counting during the day doesn't cut it, you wouldn't make a bracha on that kind of counting. I don't remember if I counted it today or not. Maybe I didn't. I'll count again because why not? The bracha. If I skipped a day, so that's fine. Every day is its own mitzvah. It's 49 separate mitzvahs, and if I missed a day, there's no reason not to count the rest of the days. So of course I should count the rest of the days. But just in case, and as the Rabbi Meshul would always say this, people kind of feel like, oh, let's throw in the towel. If I missed a day, there's not much point because I'm counting the rest of the days without a bracha. So actually, there's a lot of point because many people say that one day has nothing to do with the other. It's just out of deference to the fact that some people say it's a package deal. You don't want to make a bracha unnecessarily, so we leave the bracha out. But it's not because it's not a mitzvah. According to many people, it's perfectly biblical the rest of the time, just as it is. If you remember every single day, but just in case, we leave the bracha out.
The concept of bracha is based on the 100 brachas, or is that kind of
The 100 brachas, right? So there's a concept of making 100 brachas a day. Um, I don't know exactly about the history of the different components. I mean, it's. I never come across the idea that David Hamelach instituted the concept of brachos entirely. The references that I've always seen have simply been that he instituted the idea of 100 brachos. It happens to be, my understanding is that much of the text of the basic prayers that we which was much later in history, maybe the basic formula of brachos came before that, and it was already around the time of David Hamelach, or perhaps when Chazal referred to the 100 brachos instituted by David Hamelach, I don't know if they mean the exact text of brachos as we have today, or the concept of blessing Hashem. I'm not sure. The only things that I know are that, yes, there is a concept of making 100 brachos a day. It's associated with David Hamelach. There is a formula for brachos, which is the building blocks of the Shemona Esrei. It's the building block. Every mitzvah is preceded with a bracha whenever we eat. And obviously that was composed at some point. And that is a serious formulation because we treat an unnecessary bracha as something like an oath with the name of Hashem in vain. Not quite on the level of an oath, but akin to that. As opposed to regular prayer. A person will say, here, and Hashem Elokeinu, and use Hashem's name. There's nothing really wrong with that. You can do it. I mean, we say various hiras. They're not, some of them were created later in history. I don't know if I would recommend just throwing out Hashem's name every time you pray, but if you wanted to pray in your own language and invoke the name of Hashem, I don't believe there's any technical halachic problem with that. And certainly if you're reciting scriptural verses, Tehillim, we do that all the time. We say, you can say Tehillim all day, you can read the Chumash and use Hashem's name. But specifically in the formula of a bracha, that's something which we avoid. That's considered something very potent. As a matter of fact, interesting, I once had a situation, I don't know, Edelman told me that he heard this from somewhere. I was going to, it didn't end up being an issue, but I was going to be attending a Sheva Brachos, and I was concerned about whether the Sheva Brachos was a halachic Sheva Brachos. The marriage was a halachic marriage, the people there were halachically Jew, everything was fine, but the question of whether the Sheva Brachos was technically warranted at that meal. So I wasn't going to make an issue out of it. No one was asking me. I was just going as a guest. But the question is, I would be called on to make a bracha, and I'm not sure if the brachos are really warranted in this kind. The different rules about a Sheva Brachos, and how many days, and if you have Panim Chadashos, and different things, whatever the case is. So Rabbi Edelman said this, and he heard it from someone. The Sheva Brachos, the text that we use, comes from the Gemara. It's the Gemara in Ksubos. Gemara goes through it, basically what we have today. Maybe some modifications, but so if you're studying Gemara and you're studying the text, it says at a house, a meal celebrating a wedding, you make the following brachos, and you could say the brachos and say Hashem's name, and as part of your study. And so it's simply sit down and read the Gemara quietly, and then when they pass you the cup, just say out loud the part that they're. We had a similar thing. I think there was a similar suggestion that I read somewhere with Kiddush Levana. There's a question of how late in the month can you make Kiddush Levana on the new moon? You're supposed to do it Saturday night, and often Saturday night it's cloudy, and then sometimes it's a Yom Tov, and there's Tisha B'Av, and different things you have a certain window of time. You can't do it too early, you can't do it too late. There's the story about the Arizal or the Baba Sali. He went to try to get Kiddush Levana and went on a plane, whatever. So the point is that what if you get there is a point. Is it the 15th of the month? Is it 15 days from the Molad? Is it half of the halachic month from the Molad? So it says if you get to a point where it's almost, the time's almost up and you're not sure, that's often what happens. You're till last night, according to some opinions. So the suggestion was read the Gemara there's a Gemara about Kiddush Levana, and it says what to do. So read the Gemara and say, I don't know if that's halachically the practice or not, but it definitely came up in a discussion. I may have seen it in print, I don't remember, but that's potentially, yeah.
Well, I had a question back on the brachos for food, that if you're making a brachos for food and you all of a sudden don't have it, could you say Lamdei or that?
So another, it's in a way, if you say Baruch Atah Hashem, those three words, there is a verse in the Tehillim, Baruch Atah Hashem Lamdei Michutecha. So if you made just the first two words, Baruch Atah, you haven't said the name of Hashem, then you could just walk away. If you said Baruch Atah Hashem, you've said Hashem's name already, so you're on a problem. But if you catch yourself at that point, you can say Lamdei Michutecha, and that way you've said a scriptural verse and no harm done. If you say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu, you really have no choice. You have to really complete it as a bracha, or else, else it's a bracha in vain. At that point, you're already kind of stuck. Yeah.
What makes rabbinic?
So there's a question as to whether counting the Omer today is biblical or rabbinic. I believe the reason that it might not be biblical today is because we don't have an Omer. He says over here that it is biblical. He says here it's biblical. I think the reason that it might not be biblical today is because of the law. We don't have an actual Omer. We don't have the sacrifice. But again, that's a question that's unrelated to anything else we've discussed, whether it's a biblical mitzvah today. But let's assume, for argument's sake, that it is a biblical mitzvah. The secondary question is, again, this actually is unrelated. It could be biblical or rabbinic. But the secondary question is, are all the days separate mitzvahs? So it's 49 separate mitzvahs. So we get one mitzvah each day, or is it one package deal that counts from 1 to 49?
It's outright.
Says what?
That the both of you shall count.
The Torah definitely says it, but
it says separately.
There's not a question about how to do the mitzvah.
Separately and audibly, and that's from Ramban, and in the text, you shall count. So just.
It's not a question about. It's not a question about how you count or how you do the mitzvah. It's a question on concept. What is the legal status of the mitzvah? Is the mitzvah viewed and treated halachically as a series of separate mitzvahs, or is the mitzvah viewed as one package deal? Is it one mitzvah with 49 components? That would affect whether you make a bracha. Right? It's like the 4 cups of wine, right? I'm not sure what the rule is if you have only 3 cups, but we all understand the 4 cups are kind of a package deal, right? You're supposed to drink 4 cups. It's like, I mean, what's a Sefer Torah, right? If you're missing one page of the Sefer Torah, it's not a kosher Sefer Torah. Right? If the Erev is missing one, section, it's not a kosher Erev. So is the mitzvah of counting, you got to count all 49 days, else you haven't counted? Or is it 49 mitzvahs? For the next 49 days, each day you should do the following mitzvah. It's unrelated. What you did yesterday has no relation to what you did. One of the kind of a favorite topic, if someone becomes bar mitzvah at this time of the year, they have to give a speech on the bar mitzvah. They discuss the halacha and ramifications. What happens when a person becomes bar mitzvah in the middle of the Omer? There's no question that anything they did before the bar mitzvah is, at best, only rabbinic. But now they have a biblical mitzvah because they're an adult, but is it a mitzvah they can fulfill at all? Maybe they can't fulfill the biblical mitzvah because they were not an adult.
What is the other thing? As far as how we use the mitzvah, or?
Well, there's different. There's several questions. They're not necessarily related. One question is the whole mitzvah in our times biblical or rabbinic? Let's assume. Let's take the position that it's a biblical mitzvah. The second question would be: is that mitzvah that the Torah gave us a mitzvah to do a particular thing each day for 49 days? Or is the mitzvah one mitzvah? Now, from start to finish, we have to count 49 days in a row. It may sound like an abstract question, but it's very relevant because what happens if I miss, let's say, day number 13? So if you believe that there were 49 separate mitzvahs, so I did the first 12 mitzvahs, I'm going to do the next 36 mitzvahs, and I missed one in the middle. I missed mitzvah number 13, but I got all the other 48 mitzvahs I got. But if it's one mitzvah to count from start to finish, once I miss a day, whether it's day number 13 or any other day, I haven't done that mitzvah. I failed to count all 49. So it's like a Torah which is missing one page. It's just not a Torah. It's nice. I mean, you can study from it, you can learn things from it, but it's not a Sefer Torah. So that's the question. That affects directly whether I make a bracha the rest of the night. If each day is its own mitzvah, so who cares what I did yesterday, what I didn't do yesterday? Today is a new mitzvah, new day, new mitzvah. Right? If I didn't put on tefillin yesterday, there's no reason why I can't put on tefillin today with a bracha. Well, it's the same thing with Omer. But if it's one mitzvah to do everything start to finish, if I miss a day, then there's no more mitzvah and no more bracha. So if we miss a day, we try to cover both opinions. We say, well, it's quite possible that each day is its own mitzvah, in which case I've lost nothing by missing a day. I mean, I've lost that day, but I haven't, lost anything as far as the rest of the days are concerned. But in terms of making a bracha, we want to be cautious because, according to some opinions, I can't make a bracha since it's one mitzvah and I've lost that. So that's how. Same thing with counting. Not same thing, but counting in the daytime. Some say if I miss the night, I missed that this entire day is lost. Other people say as long as the sun hasn't gone down, it can still count. So we'll count. We don't want to miss the opportunity, but we won't make a bracha. If I count at least during the day, even though I count without a bracha during the day, by the next night I'm back to counting with the bracha, because that's where the double down comes in, because we say it's possible that tonight is a new mitzvah entirely and it's unaffected by my previous mishaps. And even if all the mitzvahs are connected in one long chain, I did count yesterday, and I counted during the day, but it wasn't nothing. So there's two possible scenarios. I can make a graph, a little grid. 3 out of the 4 possibilities, I'm good to go, right? If each day is its own mitzvah, I'm good to go regardless of whether my daytime counting works. If daytime counting is good to go, I'm also okay regardless of whether each day is a separate mitzvah. So the only scenario under which I have a problem is if both daytime counting is not good and if each day is connected as one mitzvah. So I'm allowed to make a bracha under those conditions. And that applies to any case of questionable counting. If I don't remember whether I missed the day or not, it makes the same thing. We say, look, I might not have missed the day. I might be good. And even if I missed the day, not everyone says that that's a problem. And by creating the 2 doubts, it entitles me to continue counting with the bracha. Okay. So, okay. To be continued. So that's it for today. And, hey, sure. Ready?